A very good evening, one and all present here. Thank you so much for joining us into yet another exciting event by Internship, How to Step into Space Industry. As far as I know, when we talk about space industry, we're talking about astronauts, or maybe space scientists, or maybe somebody like Jeff Bezos, who's actually gone there and, a billionaire who's gone there and come back. But to break that myth right here, I have with me Chesler Thomas, a young man who's co-authored 10 research papers in the space sector. He's won Best Space Mission in 2011 during his training in the US Space and Rocket Research Center at Huntsville, Alabama. He also co-discovered a provisional asteroid. Yes, mark my words, a provisional asteroid out of the 17 total worldwide discoveries in the world. And to mention, he's one of the only Indian team to discover a provisional asteroid. We are so very lucky to have you here with us, Chesler. Of course, to take us through this journey, how you, me, or anybody else can go or step into the space industry. Also, I have with me Piyush Srivastava, co-founder and CEO of Internship. 30 years of experience with NIIT Group. He has got ample opportunities to understand, set up, manage, and grow the education and software business. He is pioneering this mission to make sure people learn by doing. Thank you so much, Piyush, to be with us today. So coming back to space, I can't actually take my thoughts away from how can a youngster, how can a common graduate or maybe a fresh engineer get into the space industry? What do you want to say about it, Chesler?
For the very warm introduction, Prerna. And it's really an honor to be over here with Piyush as well. And thank you for the internship team for the opportunity. And speaking about the space sector, I think it's definitely up there in the stars, but it's not too difficult for any common person to reach in space. I have a few set of slides ready for everybody. This is going to be an interesting conversation, and I think everybody here would be very excited as to how they could touch the skies, reach space, and do a lot of things. So starting with my training at Huntsville, that's the time when I had the kick, okay, I wanted to go to space, be an astronaut, and so on. But after I had my training, after I had my body put through G-forces and other kinds of tests, I realized I can be an astronaut if I wanted to, but do I really need to take all that physical load, risk, and stress? I sort of went against that. I decided I'll just be an engineer and contribute from the ground. And after the last 10 years, and 4 of them being in my undergraduation, my bachelor's was in aerospace engineering, and I specialized in rockets, satellites, space stations, and missions. And I had the privilege and the opportunity to work at Skyroot Aerospace, which is where I'm still working as an analyst. And Skyroot Aerospace is the leading private launch vehicle company in India right now. And yeah, it's been a great part of a decade where I have been exposed to what's going on in space, got an opportunity to interact with, work with, and also succeed with a lot of the leaders in the industry. And in 2017 was when I had discovered that provisional asteroid and 35 plus preliminary asteroids as well. And it was in that particular year that there were only 17 discoveries from the country. And yeah, it's been a very long, bumpy, and very exciting ride so far. And I'm here to show the people who are looking towards the future as of how they can enter the space sector as to what are the avenues available, the roadmaps available, the opportunities available. Ritika, I think if I could have the slides, that would be great right now. And because I'm going to talk a lot, and it would be really great if people could keep up.
I remember, Chesler, from the last webinar where we had Dr. Ugal also, he mentioned a lot of discoveries happened, a lot of normal discoveries happened while space missions were on their way. Something like as simple as a microwave. I clearly remember his words. microwave was not really an invention to be made for humankind. It was a byproduct of space industry. So I am really excited, and I'm sure all our viewers are excited to know. Of course, you have an incredible journey being in the space industry, but how would any other career field, because that's what you mentioned us in the last webinar also, space is for everybody and everybody is there for space. So I mean, we would love to hear that.
I mean, I could go over the examples. I mean, microwave was definitely invented for the communications and other aspects. But right now, even we use microwaves to cook food in the ovens. So that's definitely one example. Another example we can think about is the cathode tubes, which in turn, brought in television and so on for the displays. And even nowadays, the, full-fledged computation performance and also processing units that were developed for the Apollo mission so that high-level computations could be done. But what could be done by the huge heavy units of the Apollo 11 could now be done easily by a hard disk. So yeah, that's the level of advancement that has come about today. So
Wow.
yeah, I could go about that, but I think the audience would be more interested as to how could someone from the mathematics domain or somebody from the electrical domain or someone even from the law domain could, actually contribute to the space sector.
Did I hear law?
Yes.
Did I really hear law? So
yes, you heard law. I can go on psychology, architecture, so on. So you name the sector, you can bring it into space.
I think we are building up the excitement. Let's get going. Ritika, is there an issue in sharing the slides? We can't see the slides yet. All right, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So if the slide is visible to everyone, can I get a show of hands? Can the audience raise your hands if it's visible? Just want to. Okay, great. Thank you. Got
Great.
that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So everything that begins in space, it's always best to stay grounded and humble. So let's start with the ground. So when we operate from the ground, when we are going to space, there's several considerations as to, whether we're thinking about the rocket that's going to take you to space, or is it the satellite that is going to actually operate from space, or is it going to be the astronauts you're taking to space, or the space stations that you would be developing, or the telescopes, like the James Webb Space Telescope that you would be taking to space, or the Hubble Space Telescope, or any of the telescopes. So there's a lot of avenues you can think about. But keeping it simple, in the ground, we have the main following avenues. One is your launch vehicle. So the actual launch site where you'll be launching from, where you would be doing the fabrication and the construction of the launch vehicle, and the logistics and transportation of that launch vehicle to the launch site after the fabrication. Because no, they don't build the rockets exactly where it's going to be. They make it somewhere and then they bring it. So there's going to be transportation and logistics involved as well. And your satellites, once they're sent up, you need to be able to communicate with them. So there's a requirement of ground stations over there. Ground stations, mission complexes. Mission complexes are usually at the same location where they launch the rocket. There's a distance over there because of the blast radius. We call these PESO considerations. So people involved in chemical engineering, people involved in petroleum engineering might be aware of the PESO considerations. So there's definitely going to be a distance, but yeah, it's pretty close to the launch site. Then there are the ground stations which link with the rockets as well as the satellites and give telemetry data as to where exactly the satellite is, where exactly the rocket is, what is going on inside the system, and so on. So it does the communication as well as the navigation. So there's the ground stations, and there are the different data centers. So let's say the satellites are working in space and they are producing huge amounts of data, like literally gigabytes per second, and taking all those data down and sitting and processing it to give actual useful insights. So there are data centers, very similar to the Facebook infrastructure, where Facebook has its huge big data centers in California. So it's pretty similar to that. And then you have your ground-based telescopes as well. So as Prerna had mentioned, I had discovered a provisional asteroid. So what we do in general is we collaborate with scientists at NASA. And what these scientists do is they have the responsibility to update a database of planetary objects. So it's called the MPOC, Minor Planetary Object Database. So the MPOC database is what we generally update in if we find an asteroid or not. So to make the work of the scientists easier, they've sort of outsourced it to anybody who's interested. So such a person would be called a citizen scientist. So the ground-based observatory, they generally operate in X-ray and so on. There are different varieties of it. So they generally capture the night sky data and they convert it into different usable files. So there are softwares that are operating on these and searching these. So colloquially speaking, they would call us asteroid hunters. So because you have a lot of data to scour through, and you have to be very careful about, whether you're actually picking an asteroid or not, is it in the database or not, because it's very easy to make a misprediction over there because all the data could confuse you. So actually understanding the data, analyzing the data, and pinpointing the right thing, which actually kind of matches with the definitions of an asteroid. So that's how you basically make the judgment. You make the report about the asteroid, and then the scientists verify it, and then they make sure that, okay, fine, you've discovered an asteroid. Now, if it's a possible asteroid and they need 5 years worth of data to evaluate it, then it's a preliminary asteroid. So I've discovered more than 35 preliminary asteroids so far, and provisional, I have discovered 2 so far. So yeah, provisional is the one they already have the data and then it's verified. So that's that. So there are ground-based applications.
Yeah, you say citizen scientist.
Citizen scientist.
Wow, that's such a unique.
And citizen scientist is not just for the asteroid activities. There are other operations also that such agencies conduct. So yeah, we can contribute as citizens.
Sorry to interject you. What I really could list down is a data analyst is needed in the space industry. Electronics and communication engineer is needed in the space industry. Then we also heard that you need the third I'm missing on. I mean, these are the fields where you don't need to actually go ahead with a specialized course in space sciences. Whatever stream of engineering that you're doing, you can blend it. You can have a practical knowledge of the space industry, a little bit to start ahead.
In fact, if you take ISRO's different job calls that they put out, it's very rare you would say, you would find something written aerospace engineer. It's usually mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, civil engineer, something or the other, technician or something, or business associate or whatever it is. So they actually rarely ask for aerospace engineers. So actually it's more open out there for the general public, those who specialize in the actual domains. But I'll get more onto it as and when we progress. So those are as far as unmanned technologies are concerned. Now, as I had mentioned, it's not just the rocket construction, but also the satellite manufacturing also happens on ground. And then there's a process where you actually, it's called a clean room, which is where you take the satellite, you make sure that there are no contaminations on it, you test all the electronics, you make sure it's working, you do the QA/QC inspection. So quality assurance, quality control, reliability engineering, all of these will come in here. And then once that's done, then there's something called assembly integration and validation, AIV, or even AIT when they call it testing. So this is where they take the satellite, they insert it into the rocket, they make sure the connections and everything are working, and it's ready for launch. So all of these applications are things where people can work on. And certain governments have their own astronaut programs as well. For example, India is coming up with the Gaganyaan program. So India is right now collaborating with France, Russia, and several other countries. So right now, India is sending their astronauts to Russia for the training and development. But it's not just about being the astronaut. You could also develop the technologies that support the astronaut. For example, in the International Astronautical Congress, which is the most prestigious symposium for space enthusiasts and actual professionals in the space industry, I was able to successfully present a paper, which was also the best paper in that particular IP. And it was about how we can modify the thrusters that are used on an astronaut's jetpack to provide more performance by using very less electrical energy. So yeah, that's a bit about that, and also a bit less fuel. So the point of that is, you don't just have to be an astronaut. You can also contribute towards how the astronaut be. So the ECLSS, the environmental control and life support systems, and the training of the astronaut. So there are underwater training facilities. So I've also had a training in the underwater facility. So you have the breathing gear and everything. It's almost like scuba diving, but they put you at rather very low depths. And also they, of course, fit a lot of heavy gear on you. So they'll give you there's a 1 hour time frame, and then you have to accomplish certain objectives before your air supply runs out and all of that. It's a little tricky, but anyway.
So some kind of relation I'm gauging out from the medical industry also. You said a lot of life support system is needed. That means you need somebody from medical sciences also in this space industry. Wow, that's very insightful.
There is also opportunity for astrobiology. In fact, one of the projects I did at the US Space and Rocket Center was studying how ants will change their feeding habits when they're operating on microgravity. So basically, you can use agar gel to develop small jellies, which basically have sugar content in them, and ants are usually attracted to sugar. So the ants which are coming to the sugar, so how do they operate in different kinds of gravitational conditions? When you change the medium, how do their attack pattern change? I mean, for acquiring the food. So there was a bit of studies I had done in that angle, but that's just one thing. And there's a lot of other research going on, for example, about stem cells and how it's accelerated in microgravity, its growth. I'll talk about it more later. And there's a question. Can you tell the roadmap to get into space industry? Don't worry, brother, I'm getting there. So yeah, that's about a bit about.
The audience are free to put in questions. We have Chesler for quite a long time here, and we will definitely put forward all our questions. Please go ahead, put your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat box.
Yeah. And as far as these companies are concerned, now establishing a company, you're going to need CAs, you're going to need HR, you're going to need business development people, you're going to need finance people. So all those business functions that come into developing an organization, that also kicks in over here. So on ground, all those functions are important. Then the United Nations has a dedicated section called the UNOSA, Outer Space Agency. So the UNOSA is very much involved in developing the policies and the law framework. So if you're a lawyer, you want to specialize into space law, there's a university called NALSAR, which is into air transportation and space law. So you could get an LLM from there, but you don't necessarily have to get an LLM from there. You could always specialize in the space sector using other courses as well, and even learn by yourself. And you could contribute by specializing in the space sector. So for example, the image below is of a moot court that they're conducting. And yeah, so those are some of the things that happen on ground. Now, from the ground, when you go to almost 500 kilometers, that's your low Earth orbit. Around 450 kilometers is where your ISS is operating, the International Space Station. So anything below that range, space scientists from +2, okay, you will have to do a graduation definitely. But until then, you can do citizen science projects, as I had mentioned earlier. You can definitely focus on projects. I'll talk more about that. So first of all, I'm just explaining what are the different avenues that you can target. So obviously you need a target in mind first, and then only you can walk towards it, right? So these are some of the targets you can keep in mind. And then the next step is what are the different steps you can take towards it. So once you reach 500 kilometers, there's your ISS, where again astronaut operations come in. Then there are CubeSats. CubeSats were a thing from, say, I think the last 10 years. But nowadays, things are also coming into phone sats. Yes, you just take a phone, you attach an antenna to it, program it a bit, and you can actually use that as a satellite. Yes, it's called a phone sat. There are chipsats, which are like even smaller than a phone. But of course, you just throw it there. It's not able to move around, but it will keep transferring data to you. So that's there. But slightly below.
That means in software industry, something as simple
software, telecommunications, mobile industries
that we hear these days is absolutely on boom, but that can also be connected to space industry. Amazing.
Yes. In fact, the telecommunication system, everything came from space only. So it's essentially just coming back. So yes, you can do that. And if you're talking about the altitudes which are below 500 kilometers, so your thermosphere, ionosphere, so your 125, 150, 200 kilometers, that is generally considered into suborbital region, where you have your suborbital rockets, you have your Virgin Orbit spacecraft, and you also have CANSATs. So there are competitions on CANSATs. So someone asked about what you can do towards graduation. So if you're actually participating in such competitions, working on such projects, and even are able to, send something experimental, because 95% of the research that happens in academia, especially at a student level, is usually theoretical. There are very few people who actually do something experimental at this stage, and especially in India. So if you're able to do something like that, it completely changes your ball game altogether. Like, let's say you're going towards MIT, Stanford, and you have something like this in your resume, it's going to completely change the odds of you getting in. So just answering that. So CANSATs, suborbital rockets, so those are below the 500 kilometer range. Then at your 500 kilometers, you have different CubeSats. Now your CubeSats and even like your slightly bigger microsats, they have a different range of applications. You could take it for Earth observation. So if you want to say image using radars, you want to image using visible cameras, you want to image using thermal images, there's a lot of other avenues you can use it as far as Earth observation is concerned. What's important is that data comes in, you process the data, and then you extract valuable insights, which can go into the agriculture sector, it can go into the climate industry, these days, climate change is there, so it can go into that, weather observation and so on. There's a lot of diverse areas you can take it into. And the same CubeSats you can also use for communication applications. So SpaceX's Starlink, which is coming up, that is also again focused into communication aspects as well. And then of course, launch vehicles such as Skyroot's launch vehicle, these take these small satellites towards similar low Earth orbits. So the low Earth orbit in itself is an economy which is maturing and really getting active right now. So if you're able to tap into this market, I would say in another 5 years, you would be more than prepared to enter into opportunities. So tapping these resources, if your target is the LEO economy, then if you're working on projects right now, you're developing skill sets, easily you can enter into within the next 5 years, because the foundation is almost ready and the players are coming in. Because in 2019, when I joined the company, there were like a dozen companies in the sector. And now it's almost touching 500 in the last 2 years. So that's a huge growth rate in the number of startups. And there's also the MNCs coming in right now. So the job opportunities are building up right now. So I would say if you're doing 12th right now, 4 years of graduation, so by the time you come out of graduation, the established base would be ready. But of course, there are things beyond this. So if you're interested, there's a different way of preparing for that. Visual astronomy as a student.
Actually, with your number that you've stated, from just 4 years back, 12 companies, a dozen companies, and now 500. I have
not 4 years, 2 years.
2 years back. Oh my God. And we have the viewers also asking, I'm in the first year. How do I get into the space industry? I want to be a cosmologist. I think Karan has asked this question. I want to be a cosmologist. What is the roadmap to it?
So
I want to talk about visual astronomy. Oh my God, we have got a lot of questions.
Visual astronomy, doing BSc astronomy is good. BSc physics is also good. I mean, if you're getting into ECE means you can get into optics as well. That is useful. I mean, any of the optical telescopes, or even if you're using X-ray, infrared, whichever ones you're using, you'll need that kind of a background. That's a good direction to start if you're interested. But even if, let's say, you have another option in hand, all of these are integrated systems. So if not in that direct aspect, you can always contribute to an aspect. That shouldn't be an issue. And regarding cosmologist at NASA, yeah, that gets a bit tricky. Coming back to the other avenues here. Now, coming from the low Earth orbit to the medium Earth orbit, that might be a bit more tricky because there's not much opportunity right now. But yes, some of the communication satellites, the bigger ones, are based on over there. And if you go to the geosynchronous orbit, that's where your navigation aspects happen. And then beyond that in altitude, there's your graveyard orbit, which is where all of these things, all of these objects you're sending in space, once they're defunct, they go to the graveyard orbit and stay there. That's how the missions are designed. And space debris is a huge issue right now, so we can focus on that as well. And translunar injection takes you to the moon, which I'll talk about in the next slide. Then asteroids, again, as I mentioned. So asteroid mining is also an opportunity I'll talk about, and the various interplanetary missions. So right now, I would say the low Earth economy and the economy around the Earth is what is developing. So if you're targeting jobs, targeting this would be the good first step. Could I have the next slide, please? Yeah, thank you. So as I discussed about the Earth, right now the Indian government is focusing more towards Chandrayaan and Gaganyaan right now. So Gaganyaan would be like more towards space station development, and Chandrayaan is of course for the moon. And then after that, it's going towards Mangalyaan, Shukrayaan. So what they're doing is they're basically gradually expanding outwards. So if your focus is for the next 5 years, Gaganyaan, Chandrayaan is a good thing to keep your bets on. If it's a bit more after that, then Shukrayaan and Mangalyaan as well. But let's say you're thinking very long term, 10, 20 years, then Aditya mission towards the sun, that's also good enough to look at. Then even Jupiter, Saturn. And I'm not just talking about India, but this is a trend that is followed by all the space organizations worldwide, especially the ones who have already established everything they need on ground. So for the ones that is done. And if you want to go even further, you could actually go out into interstellar missions. So say you're planning a mission to Proxima Centauri, you can operate towards, say, 10% of the speed of light. So because of relativistic physics, you would actually experience time much less than, what actually time passes by for the person on Earth. So that would actually give you a lot of profits on, how much of resources you're spending there, how much of food you need to take for the trip and so on. So that, then developing the right technologies for that, a lot of nuclear propulsion will come into that. So there are lots of avenues there, but that is again, another 100, 200 years forward in time. So it all depends on your priority. Like you want to focus on now or a little bit later and so on. So these are just some of the avenues. Now, everyone's most important question about the industry. Ritika, next slide, please. Yeah. Now, different people have different priorities. For some people, time is important. For others, the value you get is important. For some people, the growth you get is important. For others, the income is obviously everyone loves income. So income is also important. Now, taking the particular example of India, India has a regulator called InSpace, which is neutral towards government as well as private entities. So that's more like a regulatory agency, which is in the center. Then you have ISRO, DRDO, Baba Atomic Research Center, and all of these other organizations of the government, where you can enter in as an engineer, you can enter in as a scientist, you can enter in as a technician. And let's say if you want to enter into some other areas that is under this, so ISRO has a commercial arm called Antrix Corporation, and then there's also NSI, New Space India Limited. So they also give off the roles of related to business aspects, law aspects, and so on. So for ISRO and these people, they generally have their own entrance tests. And what they do is they also look at the GATE scores, GATE exam, and also they look at your CGPA as well. And they also focus a lot on projects and competitions and papers and of course internships, because what you learn in your actual universities and courses is one thing, but when you actually come to implementing it in the industry, it's a very different thing. And if you can't cater to their need, it wastes a lot of their time on grooming you. So that becomes a huge loss for them. So I mean, they would take you if they don't have any other options, but if they're finding somebody who has already worked on things, have an experience and a hands-on touch to things, they would rather take them over a person who's just fresh out of things. So I would, and the best thing to do when you're in university, because you're not technically allowed to go work in a company while you're working in university, the next best thing is internships. So if you do more of that, that helps you more in the sector. Then, of course, there may be people who are interested in research aspects, going into academia. For them, Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology, Indian Institute of Science, then IISER, and even the IITs, IIT Kharagpur, IIT Kanpur, and all of these, and even the private universities. So you could get in as a professor, but of course, for that, you need to write the NET entrance exams as well. And GATE is, of course, important, and also your CGPA, along with all these projects and things. Or you could even get into research grants and become a project investigator and so on. So these are certain tracks available there. And if you're looking at PSUs and MNCs, generally they look at your GATE score, CGPA, as far as PSUs are concerned, like HAL and so on. But MNCs like Lockheed Martin or your Larsen and Toubro or your Tata, they don't look so much about your GATE score. They are more focused on, like your projects, competitions and stuff, as well as your CGPA bit. So that's what they're more into. And your startups, well, they will look at your CGPA, but they are much more focused on your actual, project experience and how much of knowledge you have and how you're able to apply it, because they need fast and dynamic growth. I'll talk a bit about systems engineering and concurrent engineering a bit later. This will make a bit more sense after that. And yeah, that's that. And in Government of India, there are organizations like Startup India, Invest India, and so on, where they have these grants and calls and things, and they have a whole grant management system there and so on. So let's say they're putting something related to space sector, means they generally have requirements over there. So these are certain things within India where there are requirements. So essentially, if you have a very strong profile with projects, internships, a little bit of competitions and research papers, that sets you much far ahead as compared to what you would do with just attending the courses in a university and just getting your grades. So that's that. And for people who are interested in abroad, say NASA, the main issue is something called the ITR, International Traffic in Arms Regulations, along with the Hague Convention, which is why they generally only prefer citizens of their own country. Even if it's India also, India prefers taking only Indians for their program. So any country you take, they generally only take people of their nationality and their origin for their things. For example, Kalpana Chawla, if you take, it's written person of Indian origin, not Indian. There's a big difference over there. So that is one huge issue that's there in the industry. So in the industry and the government. So if you take any space sector of any country, there's the industry, government, and the academia. Getting into the government, unless you have like say 5 to 6 years of experience, you have say a green card in the case of US, or in the case of Europe, let's say they put for 3 months, they put out the job opportunity. And if nobody in the country is able to take it, then only they take you, unless you're like a very big expert in that particular topic. So that's as far as government is concerned. As far as industry is concerned, again, same process, unless of course you're developing your own startup, or you're some kind of a consultant, or you're working in an MNC that has a branch in India and that's transferring. That's another option you can look at. Now, the one green gateway that you can look at is academia, where let's say you're getting into master's or PhD, and let's say you're working on some research projects, or you're converting it into your own startup, or you want to be a professor yourself. So these are tracks where you can easily enter it if you want to go abroad, if that's your plan. So somebody was asking about getting into NASA. This is your main issue. So if you can sort of become a citizen there, then it's open for you. But as long as you're not,
Not,
you will
not
have to
shattering the dreams
plan
of
accordingly.
people who want to go
No,
into
no.
NASA. There are so many avenues. Chesler has already mentioned, shown on the screen.
Yeah.
Private sector,
I mean,
public sectors
if they still
are
want to go to
already
NASA, if they still want to go to NASA, they can always go there, work in a different thing. Once they have established themselves there, they can enter it. Nothing is stopping from that.
True.
So
Absolutely.
those options are definitely there. And if we move to the next slide, I will talk about something that is very special for the space sector that people in all industries can use. And this will clearly explain why other industries also have a calling in the space sector. Yeah. So let's say a random person gives you a problem statement. Let's say I give you a problem statement today. The moon Titan has seas which are consisting of hydrocarbons, so your methane, propane, butane, and so on, instead of water. And I'm asking you to design a submarine that is able to operate over there, move around there, study the things over there, utilize the things over there as a fuel. And I'm telling you to give me the submarine ready in 7 days. Would you be able to do it? Not do it. So that's the important question. So most of us people in space, we tend to be able to do it because we specialize in something called concurrent engineering. So there's something called serial engineering, which is where you generally do, first this, then that, and so on. In concurrent engineering, you take all of these aspects together and then you operate. So a particular space engineer would have to be good at aerodynamics. Aerodynamics will again come into fluid dynamics. Anybody who's studying fluid engineering, thermal engineering, systems engineering, thermal and fluid systems engineering, they would have to get chemical engineering. So CFD and all will come in here. CFD, FEA is a little more towards structures. So that is that. So structures thermal will come in there. Then, of course, for all of these things, you'll have to design. So on some CAD software, you'll have to design, you have to do simulations. Then if you look into propulsion, depending on the propulsion technology you're using, electronics will come into play, chemical engineering will come into play, structures will come into play, aerodynamics will come into play, but generally in space, you don't need it. But of course, in Titan, you'll need it. And GNC will come into play, guidance, navigation, and control. So where exactly object is pinpointed. So electronics will come in, telecommunications will come in, big data analytics will come in, and so on. Power systems will come in again. So without power, your spacecraft is not going to work. So power systems will come in, communication is going to come in. So how you're able to send the data, the telemetry aspect of it. Then of course, manufacturing it. So how the tolerances are working and what kind of manufacturing technologies will you use? What kind of metals will you use? Would you use additive manufacturing, or would you rather go for casting or welding, or would you use welding or rivets? What exactly is the right approach to go for? So these kind of questions come in. Then comes your quality assurance and quality control, which talks a lot about, how you verify whether it will actually work over there, and risk and reliability. So NASA actually has a concurrent engineering program where they select their scientists and they give them these problem statements, and within 7 days, they actually develop the solution. So if you're able to develop the skill set, this actually becomes useful in startups and other companies where time to market is a very important phenomenon. You have to reach from A to B within minimum time possible. And this actually is a problem statement of NASA's, and that solution developed is not mine. It's actually something NASA developed. I just put it out here so that you understand how many different angles are there in which you can bring it in. And of course, it's not realistic, but of course, if it's not taking this, that's good as well. So yeah.
Wow. I mean, that was a whole lot of information, but so exciting, so exciting. And people who are asking repetitively, how do we get in? How do we get in? So I think one of the important aspects that Chesler mentioned is build your portfolio. Have your profile ready, wherein you don't have to apply, but somebody calls you. Your profile gets so exciting that they call you to be there. And one of the very easy ways these days, I would say really easy ways, is to do internships. And we are really, really happy to announce that we're going to be partnering with Chesler, making a customized program for space industry. And who other than Piyush Srivastava, the CEO himself, talking about the program. Let me call upon Piyush and let's see what he wants to hear.
All right. So thank you, Prerna, and thanks very much, Chesler, for opening this exciting journey towards the space. Now, I am pretty glad to announce something which we have been working for past 8 months to all my audience here. And some of the questions which you have been asking, possibly this statement will answer that. See, what we have been doing for past 8 months is that under the guidance of Dr. Ugur Guven, who is, you can Google his name. He is part of our advisory committee. And Dr. Ugur Guven is advisor to NASA as well as to United Nations onto the nuclear energy programs. He has written 9 books, and he is the authority into the space technology. To his own credit, he has done huge amount of work into the space. Yeah, Lokesh. So I'm going to tell you. I'm going to answer a couple of questions which a lot of you have asked. So what we have done in past 8 months is because of 2 facts. One fact is, which Thomas Chesler has shared with you, is that space industry is no more something to be done in secret walls, which nobody knows what's happening. It is no more a military secret. It's opened up to the private entrepreneurs. It means it is going to explode in terms of various industries coming into play. Now, when various industries come into play into the new technology, what do? How do we prepare our people into that program? So Dr. Ugur Guven and Mr. Chesler Thomas together have been working for past 8 months with our team at Internship with this aspect in mind. What is that which industry requires? So they have the wherewithal of the industry requirement, and they're preparing for the future. And they have put together a very, very unique program, I will call it. I will not call it only internship. It's a program. It's a composite program which these 2 eminent people have put. And the secret sauce of this program is exactly what Mr. Thomas Chesler just said. What we are going to do is, Prerna, we are going to create a concurrent engineering simulation through these projects. It means what? Let me tell you in a simple word. Let's say you're doing a training, for example, you're doing a training into, let's say, cloud computing. So you will learn about cloud computing. And then you are doing a training, let's say, onto blockchain. So you will do training in a blockchain. But as Thomas Chesler was just narrating to you, concurrent engineering is you work on a particular topic, a particular concept, but you bring everything together, whether it is aerospace engineers, whether they are going to be astronauts, whether they're going to be designing the submarine, whether they are going to be designing the systems, whether they are going to be the maintenance people, whether they are going to be the lawyers who will create the risk assessment matrix, or they are chartered accountant who are calculating the cost. Everybody works together. Everybody works together. Whether you are an environment scientist, whatever you are, you put all the team together, give them a topic and work with them. So right now, internship today, with my audience right now, we are announcing 4 different programs towards the space technology. Now these 4, I mean, in terms of heading of those programs are called Earth to Space and Space to Space, and then Interstellar Mission. There are 3 programs. Earth to Space is broken into 2 parts. Now, many people have asked here, and I'm trying to answer a couple of questions. I could see some people ask, look, I'm doing mathematics. Do I have a role to play? Yes, you have a role to play. Yes, you have a role to play. Look, I want to become astronaut. Of course, you can become astronaut. I want to go to NASA. Let me answer it very differently. I am saying, let NASA come to you. Let NASA come to you. Why should you go to NASA? NASA will come to you if you make yourself future ready. So what we are going to do, using the concurrent engineering concept, we created these 4 projects. And these projects are very interesting. There is a concept. There is a project which is being taken by the industry, which is being drawn by what is the future requirement. And every project has got a different set of people required to work onto that project. And how we will run that training program, how are we going to run that whole program, is like this, that we will have Thomas Chesler as the program director of that. He will introduce the topic. He will let people, he will immerse everybody into the topic, and then he will create the role of different people into that project. So anybody can join that particular training. Means you don't have to be, you want to become astronaut, you want to apply your knowledge of accounts, you want to apply your knowledge of being a medicine student, or you want to apply your knowledge of becoming a data analytics, whatever. I mean, you want to apply your knowledge of software developer, you are doing mechanical engineering, you're interested in maintenance, you want to be part of that? Of course, yes. So all this assimilation of different people will work onto that project. And in that project, Thomas will create sub-projects for every different role holders, and they will connect to one point, which is the project point. The good thing about that thing is that all these projects which students will do, or students or entrepreneur, anybody, I mean, we have got inquiries from various new entrepreneurs who want to get into this business. They will also be joining. You're a businessman and you want to join this particular program to understand, okay, I want to start a new business, what should I do? Something like that. So everybody put together will be part of this program. And Thomas Chesler will be the program director. He will have various experts coming in sometime talking about different aspects of subjects. But the good thing is that the whole program will be supervised by Dr. Ugar Guven. And Dr. Ugar Guven will in turn take this project synopsis to various international forums. So somebody asked us how we can go to NASA. See, you will start creating your international footprint by doing these projects. And once you start creating this footprint into the international arena, obviously, as I told you, NASA will come to you. I mean, why should you go to NASA? That's the whole thing all about it. So this is what, Prerna, I wanted to announce, because I've got a whole list of, but I am on, because I can keep on rattling. Acha, mechanical engineer also we want doctors, we want astronauts, we want chartered accountant. But as I said, every project is, and we will be announcing that project in detail, and people will find it out that all kind of people can join these projects and aspire and reach to their aspirations. The basic idea is, like Thomas Chesler was saying, please understand the secret of this thing. I mean, you're very fortunate. All these youngsters are very, very fortunate people, because this generation is the generation which is really going to go to Mars. We possibly may not be able to go to Mars. I will possibly visualize it, or I will possibly see it on a screen, or maybe some science fiction movie, or maybe real rockets launching. But this generation is definitely going to travel to Mars. One day, not very far in future, when these youngsters are in their 40s, they will be packing their bags with the family and going and telling them, okay, I'm on my trip to moon. I'm going on a trip to Mars. I'm off for 2 months or something like that. These, or maybe they will work on Mars. Who knows? So I'm simply saying that the secret of getting into this journey is like this: build your block today, build your expertise today. Get onto this exciting journey, catch on to this train. Don't let this bus go, because tomorrow word, the current dispensation of job is not going to exist. This is all going to change. So all my young friends should look into future and try to figure out where their career lies, where are the opportunity lies, and add these experience to your own experience portfolio. I will not say resume, your own experience, because we don't want you to do a namesake experience on resume. No, real experience. Do it, learn it, practice it, become master, and create your own currency. So I can say that, Prerna, and over to you. I'm very sure Thomas has to say so many things. I possibly would have taken a little bit of more time, but I think that's what I wanted to say, my young friends. Over to Chesler Thomas.
That's such an exciting news, of course, that already gives me goosebumps. Who knows, we're going to be not working from home, but working from Mars. So having said that, yes, it is really, really important. And we have big announcements coming from internship in the space industries. So please, please follow our Instagram page, our LinkedIn profile, our Facebook pages for the upcoming announcements, the details about the course, the duration, the course structure, the cost, and how to get into various fields will all be mentioned. So please do follow us now. Coming back to the space industry, I had a couple of questions there. Somebody from maths background, asking, how can I get into space? Somebody talking about statistics, somebody talking about analytics. So I have something very, very interesting that Chesler has to share about Artemis Accords. Individual efforts, as Piyush also mentioned and reassured, that concurrent engineering is the next big thing, bringing a thought into reality in no time, in the least time possible. And that's probably where a lot of countries are coming together to make sure the projects towards space are to a new level. Let's hear what Chesler has to say about it.
When any person thinks about the space sector, it of course starts from the ground, goes into rockets, satellites, space stations, and so on. But mankind has always strived to cross the borders of the atmosphere and go towards other worlds. And the last successful attempt on the same was when the Apollo mission was successfully able to take 3 astronauts, Armstrong, Aldrin, and Collins, to the moon. And a lot of time later, we are still struggling to go to the moon, which is why right now, instead of the US and the USSR competing, the US has actually opened arms and invited other countries to join in its venture as a globalized attempt to take humans to space. And Artemis in Greek is actually the twin of Apollo, which is why they have named this mission as Artemis, and is targeting to send the first woman and first person of color to space. This is what the Artemis Accords is all about. Now, the avenue where US and other countries such as Australia, Brazil, Canada, Israel is one of the latest joinees, Italy, Japan, South Korea, Luxembourg. Luxembourg is popping up these days and is having a lot of capital to invest. Mexico, New Zealand, Poland, Ukraine. UAE has been a very quick entrant into the space sector. The UK, and of course the country leading all of this is the US. And there is a lot of turmoil and question as to whether the other countries should enter into the Artemis Accords or not. And it is still open for other countries to join in as well. Now, what is this Artemis Accord? Well, it is the avenue where these different countries can bring in their areas of expertise, their resources together and pool it. Such as, for example, the United States has expertise in space technologies for astronaut missions. And Luxembourg has very good levels of funding and also a well-defined legislation on space mining. And Italy, UK are looking into expanding their manufacturing capabilities, and including Canada as well. And what they see is this is an opportunity for them to catch on to the trend and develop their manufacturing capabilities and increase the activities in their economy. And these are the values that the Artemis Accords are looking towards, which is, of course, to propagate peaceful purposes. So all the activities that would be happening under these accords would be for peaceful purposes and for increasing knowledge and also scientific progress and globalized development. And they take a transparent approach where all the mission policies and the strategies and the agendas are developed and shared and kept in a transparent manner so that each of the countries involved can freely operate and freely contribute to the common goal. And it is designed to be interoperable. Why? Because since there are a lot of different countries involved, each of these countries would have a different set of standardized operations, and bringing in a universal set of standards would actually allow the different technologies to be incorporated together. So you could bring in a lot of quality assurance, quality control in here. It also talks about the emergency assistance where there are astronauts, and when astronauts are put in distress situations, for example, if there is an extravehicular activity going on, or some kind of a sample mission going on, or some kind of a scientific activity going on, if say the astronaut faces an emergency or a distress situation, all of these countries, the technologies they're developing is such that any astronaut involved in the moon mission is receiving as much assistance as possible, which brings in a fusion of both engineering, technology, scientific activities, and life sciences. And the Artemis Accords also advocates the registration of objects, which is something that not every nation is following these days, but most of the prominent nations in the space sector are strictly following, where each of the objects that are sent in space with respect to the United Nations outer space policy has to be registered, has to be quantified, and has to be tracked so that there is a clear idea as to what is being sent from the Earth to space and what is being brought from space to the Earth, and also taking into account the prevention of contamination of Earth by bringing in space assets, or the outer space by sending out any objects from the Earth. And protecting the heritage is also an aspect that is highlighted, where if there are any historical assets or any items of heritage located in these sites, such as the Shackleton crater, these would be preserved and protected through the protocols, through the operations, through the missions that are planned by these countries together. And space resources is a very important aspect here, which is to be highlighted, which is going to open up a lot of job avenues, because the technologies that would be developed this time would focus a lot more onto how can resources be extracted from the moon to the Earth. This can be done by a variety of ways. The regolith of the moon is rich in aluminium, silicates, and several other elements which can be extracted and utilized for in-space manufacturing on the moon, or it could be utilized and transported back to the Earth. And there is a lot of other avenues in which it can be used. For example, helium-3 is a resource which is available on the moon and which can be tracked, extracted, and utilized for nuclear power sources. And deconfliction of activities is another avenue they are considering, where because there are a lot of different countries involved, there is always scope for conflict and arbitration. And what they are trying to do is to ensure that there is a coherent set of activities working together. For example, if two people are trying to do the same thing without each of them knowing about it, without a synchrony, there are chances for conflict, there are chances for mismatches. But working together in one direction, in coherence, prevents these issues. Coming to the addressing the orbital debris and spacecraft disposal aspects, these days we as a space community are very worried about the kind of debris and the kind of impact that we are leaving onto the space that is available to us. And we have already created enough of debris in the low Earth orbit, and we have created a lot of debris which has been sent to the graveyard orbit. And one primary consideration that we are taking is to prevent the same to be repeated on the moon. So the different kinds of aspect we consider here ranges from preventing of orbital debris all the way to mitigating the kind of debris that is formed in case anything is produced. And spacecrafts are going to be an important aspect of this mission, because you need to conduct the entire transportation of resources from the Earth to the moon. So this is going to involve launch vehicles, this is going to involve spacecrafts, and if the Lunar Gateway project is established, then and anything relevant to that, then even to an extent space stations. So if this is brought into play, there is going to be a lot of resources, be it from the Earth, be it manufactured in space, that is going to be involved. And if there is any physical assets involved in space, it is definitely going to have a lifetime. And if there is a lifetime, then once the mission lifetime is over, that spacecraft is no longer an asset. It is just a floating piece of junk, which is what we call a debris. And this particular debris is not just there posing as a threat to the space environment, it is also an active threat to any and every other asset we are sending into space, be it a manned mission of an astronaut, or be it an unmanned probe, or be it a satellite, whatever it is. It is a huge source of disaster. And insurance and policies which are being developed for the different rockets, satellites, and other kinds of space assets also considers the debris as a huge risk, which is why the insurance premium is very high for these kind of situations. And if we are able to take preventive measures and prevent the formation of debris rather than creating the debris and regulating it later, it brings down the price margin on the insurance and thereby reduces the risk and also increases the access to market as far as the lunar economy is concerned. And all of these countries are also having their own private startups which needs to operate in the cis-lunar economy, where they would have different companies that cater to the different needs that an ecosystem developed on the moon would require. Say, for instance, if they require power. So capitalizing on the solar radiation that is striking the moon, because it doesn't have an atmosphere and doesn't get attenuated, is one aspect that is being looked at. Shimizu Corporation in China is developing belts which can be utilized to extract energy and then again deliver it back to the moon or even beam it to the earth, and lots of other applications. And because of the availability of helium-3 on the moon, nuclear power plants are also being considered to be created on the moon. And along with this, certain in-space manufacturing techniques are also considering the utilization of the lunar regolith using microwave-based sintering to convert the regolith into bricks, which could be used for constructions of the different settlements and the habitats on the moon. And certain new technologies are also being explored by NASA for operating on the moon and are being integrated into the Artemis program, such as a call for a proposal they have put in, where the rockets are supposed to land on the moon without creating the lunar dust, which is again very dangerous, because if you actually go to the Apollo mission and look at the shoes of the astronauts, you would see that there is a lot of grazing and scraping on the shoes of the astronauts, which was caused because the lunar dust is made up of silicates and metal and is extremely dangerous. And it's also containing radiation, which makes it a huge threat to human beings and any other missions happening, and even unmanned spacecrafts. So using those same dust.
So yeah, that's very interesting. We said Artemis Accords is gonna be so many countries putting in efforts in the same direction. That means, all in all,
Yes,
so many
yes.
exciting. Almost every country that you talked about is working on so many exciting projects, which are not just beneficial for, exploration, but it's something very, very important for the humankind also. So anybody who's any nation that's sending an expedition all the way to space, if the efforts are put in collectively, definitely the results are going to be faster. The results are going to be major, also impactful, also. Very well. So taking it ahead, when you say so much effort is being put in this field, where do the youngsters find their place in in the space field? So if we can just highlight a few exciting projects that are, I'm sure you have mentioned so many of them, but a few of them which could relate to the youngsters ahead, if you could highlight the same.
So as I had discussed earlier, I had given a very quick overview as to what exactly are the value chain of the space sector. And now we will look at certain specific growth points that have accelerated the actual economic activity in those particular sectors. So for instance, if we take astronomy, we definitely had the Hubble, and now we have the James Webb Space Telescope, which has been designed to capture infrared radiation. And the advantage of infrared radiation is because it operates in longer wavelengths, you could actually see further distances, and hence even more outer into the universe, and hence even more things that have happened in the past. So further into the past, because we would say telescopes operate as time machines, because when a source generates light, it actually takes time to reach the particular user, And whatever we are seeing in the particular telescope is actually the image that was formed billions of years ago. So right now it might be something entirely different as compared to what we are looking via the telescope. So the James Webb Space Telescope is not only that, it is also the construction of a telescope that has taken the largest mirror that is sent to space. So that is in itself a technological feat that has been accomplished. Now, the space telescope taking the data is one thing. Now, processing that data, using it in the ground, using it for different scientific activities, filtering the other data from the noise that is extracted, and gathering useful insights from it. So there's a lot of ground-based applications that are coming into this. And that in turn would take things to a higher level in astronomy. So if students are pursuing BSc Astronomy, BSc Physics, so they do have a lot of scope of working onto the James Webb Space Telescope, or even other kinds of telescope. Let's say if India is trying to develop a new telescope, so they could work on that. Even there are private companies these days working on smaller miniaturized CubeSat telescopes. So there's a lot of growth scope happening in that avenue because James Webb has now crossed another frontier into that technology. And as we all have wanted to go to space, that's much more closer than when rockets were actually invented, because Blue Origin, SpaceX, and Virgin Galactic and Virgin Orbit have actually taken people to space now. So be it Richard Branson taking Sirisha Bandla, who's the fourth person to actually go to space, or be it Elon Musk, who's taking an 82-year-old and an 18-year-old in the same flight. I mean, I'm sorry, Jeff Bezos taking the same flight, or Elon Musk actually taking people to space and helping them stay there for 3 days, which is a long duration for taking civilians to space. This has crossed the barrier of us dreaming about going to space and actual civilian people like us actually going to space. So this in turn is going to create a lot of avenues, especially when we consider the fact that ISS has declared to be deorbited by 2030, and NASA has already given out grants for developing commercial space destinations to 3 different companies. And once these commercial space stations are ready, there's a lot of space flight happening. There's a lot of new avenues formed over here in terms of tourism, in terms of scientific activity, commercial activities. In fact, even Tom Cruise is planning to conduct a movie in space now. So there's a huge plethora of opportunities that are coming in here. So actually, different kinds of fields can be brought in here, converged over here, be it your entertainment, be it your hospitality, tourism, your fintech, any of the kinds of avenues because there is even like blockchain technologies that are being operated from space. So all of these are actually being accelerated through actually taking humans to space. And if we look at the Parker Solar Probe, it is the spacecraft that has, for the first time, touched the sun. So this has actually created a tremendous leap in what we know as our capability in terms of thermal and material sciences. Because being able to touch the sun and make it alive is no small feat. And by doing that, the Parker Solar Probe has once again established a new avenue for humans, a new frontier for humans, because thermal engineers, your material science experts, they have found the next trajectory on how to take things forward. The same technology can be translated into different other domains, be it your geosciences, even if it is studying volcanic activities, or even if it is say high temperature applications such as your F1 racing. So there's a lot of other avenues that this can be spin off into. So be it race car enthusiasts also, it gets translated as well. And if we look at Capella Space, it is a satellite company that is actually developing radar satellites. Now, radar satellites are generally 1 ton in size. And when Capella is actually making this, it's making it in 50 kilograms. And it's also taking up a sub-meter resolution. So generally the resolution is 3 meter, 1 meter, 5 meters. They are taking it in centimeter ranges. So 25 to 50 centimeters of resolution for the images. So this is in itself a huge leap, because that much less weight, that much high quality of data, and sending multiple satellites is going to change the whole Earth observation ecosystem ecosystem altogether. And it's not just in radar satellites, there's also a lot of developments happening in hyperspectral imaging, optical imaging, thermal imaging, and a lot of other avenues for Earth observation from which data and analytics is taken. And because of the new ESGs that have come up and in the Glasgow proceedings, there is a new avenue for actually looking into renewable energy, climate change. So the amount of high resolution, high quality data that is obtained at a much lower price point than conventional satellites is actually going to open up the market for new job opportunities. So software engineers can work on the image processing and data analytics aspect of it. So whether we're studying big data analytics, whether we're studying ML, AI, which is of course key to being able to process images into a much more higher quality than what is initially available. They get an opportunity over there. The developing the transforms for the image processing, that includes a lot of mathematics. So students involved in BSc mathematics are again getting opportunities over here. And satellite engineers, electronics engineers, different kinds of people are getting opportunities over here. And if we look towards interplanetary exploration, we are much closer than ever with SpaceX working on the Starship. And Starship is a new innovation compared to the typical rockets that we look at, even the reusable rockets of SpaceX with the Falcon 9. Starship actually uses steel, SS-304 steel to construct its body. Generally, we look at aerospace and we say we use a lot of fancy materials like aluminum, titanium 6Al4V, or any of the other complex materials, or even Invar or Inconel or any of those other complex materials. But Starship is actually using steel for the manufacturing of its rocket, and it is much closer to its completion now than ever, which is taking us closer than ever to actually going to Mars. And SpaceX has again developed the Starlink constellations, which is providing connectivity access to remote locations, thereby increasing internet access to the populations in the zones which are outside conventional access to be the underground data cables or the actual communication satellites that are currently available. So through the satellite avenue is not only giving these upgrades, it's also giving through astroscale ways for space debris management. So satellites which are using special kinds of mechanisms are actually capturing debris and either burning it down to the Earth or sending it to the graveyard of it, thereby decreasing the risk towards other spacecrafts and missions that are being sent to space. And any kind of mechanical engineers get an opportunity towards designing these mechanisms, and ECE engineers get to work on the tracking systems of these armatures, because actually tracking the debris at the speed at which the debris is moving, connecting with it successfully is not a simple task. It requires very high amount of processing capabilities, very fine-tuned state-of-the-art camera technologies to actually be able to sense the debris, locate the debris, and with very fine precision and coordination, capture it and get rid of the debris. And if we look towards asteroid mining, there is a lot of progress now, because the Lucy mission is something that is being sent to the Jupiter's Trojan asteroids, where it is going to study the asteroids, the surface topology of the asteroid, the temperature on the surface of the asteroid, the density, the internal properties of the asteroid, and if there is any other moons or satellites revolving around these asteroids. And another avenue that has come in is also asteroid mining. For instance, there are asteroids where diamond or gold itself is available in $700 quintillion worth of quantity, and that is 700 that is with 16 zeros. So if that gold is extracted from there and brought back to the Earth, that is going to completely disrupt how the current metallurgical economy or the rare metals or the precious metals economy is working right now on the Earth, because you're actually bringing new raw material quantity from space. Then there is the double asteroid redirection test. For instance, we've all dreamed about or seen in movies the day where asteroids come and destroy everything. And that is a very scary thing to think about. But with NASA and SpaceX, they are working on the double asteroid redirection test, where they're using asteroids, they are using satellites to deflect asteroids using basically kinetic impactor technology. And by deflecting the asteroids, they're actually protecting the Earth by preventing these asteroids to hit the Earth and go in a different trajectory altogether. And another discovery that has been found this time is that when we take stem cells to space, be it the suborbital level also, if there is microgravity, the generation of the stem cells is proven to be much faster. this has brought in a lot of new technologies and new avenues for development in the medical sector, and which, because stem cells is of course important for different kinds of genetic disorders, different kinds of handicaps and other things. And we have the Mars, where everybody's targeting to go right now. In 2021, 3 different countries were able to target and actually accomplish missions on Mars together. The Perseverance mission by the US, the Tianwen-1 mission by China, and the Hope mission by UAE. So with all of these activities happening, you could be from any of your domains, be it in engineering, be it in the medical domain, be it in the law domain. As I had explained about the Artemis Accords earlier, there's going to be a lot of law involved. There's going to be actuarial analysis involved. There's going to be risk and reliability involved, insurance premiums. So you could name the domain and you could actually be involved into this. For Fourier transforms or the image processing, there's going to be mathematics involved. And even for developing the different satellite electronics, for upgrading the solar panels. There's a lot of avenues right now in which, no matter what field you are in right now, you can actually converge it into space sector. A professor once told me that the beauty of aerospace engineering is once you learn aerospace engineering, you can apply it into any field. But the converse is also equally true. No matter what field you learn, you can always bring it into the space technology and use it. So, yeah.
Wow, that was really exciting. I have so many questions and people asking about what is the scope for 10th, 11th, 12th students? What's the scope of mathematics students? What is the scope for law students? I think Chesler pretty much summarized. There is a whole lot of opportunities waiting out for you. People are asking for how long the internship is. The program is going to be launched on the website. Please do come and visit internshape.com and check out on the upcoming programs in space technology coming in. You can follow us on all the social media channels. The links are shared in the chat as well. You could follow us through the website as well. The internship programs are going to be for different category of students for a different time requirements. And of course, they're going to be pretty much affordable. So go ahead. Don't miss out on this opportunity. I will take a few more questions about certificate. Yes, it's a certificate program. It's a coach-assisted program. Then I have somebody asking me about mathematics students, BSc mathematics. I think that's pretty much being answered. This is physical or virtual. We are starting off with virtual internships. I am sure, as we said, the day is not very far where we're going to be working from Mars. So definitely, if we get the opportunity, we're going to be including physical opportunities as well. As of now, it's a virtual opportunity. Any other? I'm really sorry if I'm missing on to any questions. We are running out of time, but it's been a pleasure having everybody out here. What an engaging crowd, what an engaging audience, and what an energy scene on the chat. I would just call upon Piyush for the closing remark now.
Thank you, Prerna. And once again, I must thank each and every participant, because it is their energy which gives us energy. So thank you so much for attending this. You have still a lot of questions, and I can assure you, though I was trying to answer a couple of questions, couple of the questions have been answered by Prerna also. There are some technical questions which I'm sure will possibly take more time to explain, and Thomas Chesler is one of the person who engages with the younger crowd far more easily. I can assure you that those technical questions you will get answered in your mailbox from Thomas. Look out for his mail. As regards the program is concerned, we are going to send you the details of the program, each and every person, and you will be, I'm very sure that all the program detail is going to answer a lot of questions about the program. So thanking you all my participants once again. Thank you, Chesler Thomas, once again. Thank you, Mr. Dr. Ugar Guven, who was on a chat with me. He is traveling between one country to another. And so he sent me a message. He sent the best wishes to each and every one of you. And hopefully next time, I'm looking forward for you to joining the program and meeting Dr. Verguven and Chesler Thomas more and more yourself. So thank you, Prerna. Thank you, the entire team. And thanks a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Anybody whose questions were not answered, please put in your questions on the Facebook link. You could view the webinar again on Facebook. It's live there. It will be there, and you can put in your questions in the comment section. We would, as Piyush promised, Chesler personally would be involved in making sure that you feel your queries are answered. Thank you so much once again. It's been a lovely audience. We look forward to meeting you again soon.